Kappa. Few creatures in Japanese folklore are as widely recognized as the Kappa. It lives in rivers and lakes, resembling a child-sized humanoid with scaly green skin, a turtle-like shell on its back, and a shallow dish on top of its head filled with water. That water is the source of its power. If it spills, the Kappa is weakened or even immobilized. Kappa are known for dragging people and horses into the water, and for centuries, warnings about swimming alone in rivers were tied to fear of this creature. Interestingly, Kappa are also said to be polite. If you bow to one, it will bow back, spilling its water in the process. Some legends even describe Kappa as capable of forming agreements with humans and honoring them faithfully over many years. Tengu. The Tengu is one of the most complex figures in all of Japanese mythology. Early depictions showed it as a crow-like monster, but over time it evolved into something more human, a tall, red-faced figure with a long nose, dressed like a mountain ascetic. Tengu are associated with the deep forests and high peaks of Japan, and they are strongly tied to the practice of martial arts. Many legendary swordsmen were said to have trained under Tengu masters in secret. Though originally regarded as demons or omens of war, Tengu gradually shifted in popular perception towards something more like fierce protectors of the mountains. They are proud and short-tempered, but not entirely evil. Kitsune. The kitsune is a fox spirit with deep roots in both Shinto religion and everyday folklore. As a fox ages and grows wiser, it gains additional tails up to 9, and its magical abilities become increasingly powerful. Kitsune can shapeshift into human form, often appearing as beautiful women, and they are capable of creating elaborate illusions that are nearly impossible to distinguish from reality. Their relationship with humans is layered. Some kitsune are divine messengers of the rice god Inari, worshipped at thousands of shrines across Japan. Others are tricksters who deceive, possess, or quietly ruin the people they encounter. The distinction between a benevolent and a malevolent kitsune often comes down to origins and motivations, which are rarely clear until it is too late. Oni. The Oni is perhaps the most iconic of all yokai, appearing in festivals, artwork, and children's stories throughout Japan. Enormous in stature, with horns, wild hair, and iron clubs, Oni serve as the enforcers of the underworld in Buddhist-influenced beliefs. They drag sinners before the courts of hell and carry out punishment without mercy. On the surface, they appear as pure monsters, but folklore is more complicated. Some Oni stories involve redemption, transformation, or even gratitude. The bean-throwing festival called Setsubun, still celebrated today, is centered around driving Oni away from the home with shouts of "Oni wa soto, demons out." Their image is everywhere in Japan, from temple gates to professional sumo. Yuki-onna. The Yuki-onna is a spirit born from winter itself. She appears as a tall, pale woman with long black hair, drifting through snowstorms, often barefoot, leaving no footprints in the snow. Depending on the region and the version of the story, she kills travelers by freezing them with her breath, or she leads them astray until they collapse from cold and exhaustion. In some tellings, she is more sorrowful than malevolent, a woman who died in the snow and cannot leave it. One of the most well-known versions of her story, recorded by writer Lafcadio Hearn in the late 1800s, involves a strange bargain with a woodcutter and a secret kept for years. The Yuki-onna reflects a very old fear of Japanese winters, which historically killed many people in mountain communities. Jorogumo. The Jorogumo is a spider that has lived long enough to become something far more dangerous. After reaching 400 years of age, a spider spirit gains the ability to take the form of a beautiful woman, and it uses that form to lure men, often samurai or travelers, to secluded locations, binding them in silk threads and consuming them. The name itself translates roughly as entangling bride, and the creature appears in several regional legends, particularly near waterfalls and still ponds where spiders were said to gather in large numbers. The Jorogumo is intelligent, patient, and entirely without sympathy for its prey. Some stories suggest it can keep a man enchanted for weeks before he realizes what is happening. Gashadokuro. The Gashadokuro is the spirit of mass death and forgotten grief. When soldiers die on a battlefield without proper burial, or when people starve during famine with no one to mourn them, their accumulated resentment is said to take physical form as a giant skeleton, sometimes 15 times taller than a person. It wanders at night in silence, appearing without warning to bite off the heads of lone travelers. The only sign of its approach is a ringing sound in the ears before it strikes. The Gashadokuro cannot be destroyed, only avoided or temporarily repelled with Shinto charms. It persists until the rage that created it is somehow spent. More than a monster, it functions as a symbol of what happens when the dead are not given their due respect. Zashiki-warashi. The Zashiki-warashi is a household spirit that takes the form of a small child, typically between 5 and 12 years old, with rosy cheeks and old-fashioned clothing. It lives in the inner rooms of large traditional homes, and its presence is believed to bring great fortune to the family. The spirit is mischievous rather than dangerous, known for moving objects, making noise at night, and occasionally sitting on sleeping family members. The troubling aspect of the Zashiki-warashi is not its presence, but its departure. When the spirit chooses to leave a household, the family's luck leaves with it, and accounts of sudden poverty, illness, and death following the spirit's disappearance appear consistently throughout folklore collections from the Tohoku region of northern Japan. Noppera-bo. The Noppera-bo is a faceless ghost. From a distance, it looks entirely human, a man or woman going about normal business, walking along a road, or sitting near a lantern. It is only when you get close enough that you realize something is wrong. The face is smooth and blank, without eyes, nose, or mouth. The creature does not attack or harm. It simply turns toward you and reveals what it is. The horror is in that moment alone. Stories of Noppera-bo were particularly popular in Edo period Japan, and one of the most retold versions involves a man who encounters a faceless woman by a canal, flees in terror, and then runs to a food stall for help only to find the vendor turn around and show the same empty face. Kuchisake-onna. The Kuchisake-onna is a woman whose mouth has been cut from ear to ear, creating a permanent and terrible smile. She walks at night wearing a surgical mask covering her face, and she approaches strangers to ask whether they find her beautiful. If the answer is no, she kills the person immediately. If the answer is yes, she removes her mask to reveal the full extent of her mutilation and asks the question again. There is no safe answer. Unlike most yokai, the Kuchisake-onna is relatively modern in origin, emerging as an urban legend in the late 1970s in a wave of reported sightings that spread across the country. Schools sent children home in groups. Police received calls. She occupies a space between ancient folklore and contemporary fear, a yokai born not from old belief, but from something much closer to the present.